Everything is good. Yeah. There's no waiting room either.
Whew.
Time to work on their arguments.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
ready.
I think everybody's got to close out of the of your prior tab.
Yeah.
Remo. So we're
Yeah,
getting
when
a
you
reverb.
guys go over to the Zoom, you can kill the Remo, right? Or are you guys coming back in here?
No, we're
No.
not coming back in.
We're not coming back in.
All right, I'm quitting event. Okay,
Hi,
thank you.
guys.
But you can access the Zoom from in there.
All right.
All right. Just waiting for everybody to filter in here. Hi, Emma.
So I can just hit this Halo Classroom then, that's what I'm doing?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, people are filtering in. Yeah, no waiting room on this one. Right in. Well, looks good. Sal, excellent.
All right.
All right, Pete. Awesome.
All right, great. All right. So Dave, can you give me the screen share?
Got it.
All right.
All set.
Is that everybody? I feel like we're well, Roger's not in today. Who else? Where's Jason Stoll?
Oh, he didn't log in.
No, he was on the he was in the Rema.
Oh, was he? Hold on.
Yeah.
I'll go back and find him.
Yeah, go get him.
Okay.
Pittsburgh took off.
Just trying to get the last appetizer off of the buffet. All right. You got him? You see him?
No, not yet.
Logging back in now. Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, great. All right, so we are going to start off here. Our friend Ayal. Ayal, you want to give us, as I start off every other class, what's the DNA of the founder and CEO, from a business standpoint, as well as from, personal standpoint and personality. You're on mute.
As the world now is familiar with the name Adam Neumann, Adam is a second cousin who I've known for 20 plus years. He is an ambitious and charismatic and dynamic person that has the ability to make you believe that what he says is true and real and possible. There have been very few people that I've met in my life that have that level of charisma. I'm not dropping names, but one of them, but I will. One of them was Bill Clinton, who, when you met him, which I had the pleasure of doing, you have too, Pete. You shake his hand. I talked to him about the Israeli Arab-Palestinian challenges. And he made me believe like he cared and it was top of his mind and that he was listening to me like what I said mattered at all. And Adam Neumann, if he's connected and he needs you or wants your money, has that skill set. And clearly that skill set has managed to get him $47 billion of investment money. I have had experiences with him on a personal level. And now that we're recorded, we're being recorded, I'll be discreet about it. But I've been exposed to some of what's been said in the news about his style and his behavior. I know that turnover at WeWork was extremely high. Adam doesn't suffer fools, and he expected 150%. His inner circle were those that were close to him before he became big. The people that he was in the military with in Israel, his closest friends. He brought them over from Israel and plucked them into executive roles at WeWork. He didn't feel like he needed to do favors for anybody. The family, relationship didn't mean anything. He told me, to his credit, he said, "I got to lose weight." But Pete says that to me every day. There was a period halfway through about 4 or 5 years ago where he asked me to interview with the head of HR there and the head of global sales. I have a knack for sales. The guy came from Uber. He was head of sales at Uber. They were both gone within 3 months. And after about, a few more months of following up and trying to find out who the people were, I kind of let it go. Having a sense that it was a challenge working at WeWork in an executive level. My brother also had personal dealings, even more so with Adam, in a philanthropic kind of domain. But it got dicey. Things are dicey. Adam wants control of everything. I can tell you, my brother's a physician, and he wanted to create a clinic for. Am I going too offline here, Pete?
No. Keep going because this is important.
My brother had an idea. He's a developmental and pediatrician, and he wanted to create a clinic for autistic kids and their parents in New York City that is a one-stop location from A to Z to be able to support and offer services that you don't necessarily get at a hospital. And parents aren't necessarily taught how to help their kids sleep or focus or the simple questions of like, and this is real, is pot.
Zoom classroom. So there's like 2 or 3 of you in here. You want to move out, and by getting to the Zoom classroom, all you have to do is hit the center picture that has the halo going around, and that's going to pop a window up, and then hit that green button, and that will give you the Zoom link where the rest of the class is, and they're asking if I can push you over into there. So, but you have to take that action. So I'm going to end the presentation mode now. And if you wouldn't mind, please hit that and then hop into the Zoom, and you'll be all set. Enjoy your experience. But guys, we'll hope you have a good class. Take care. Bye-bye. Yes.
All right. Oh, so we're still waiting on Frank to get in here as well.
You want me to hold or keep going, Pete?
Why don't you keep going, and I'll and we can.
Yeah, this is being recorded, so don't, we'll,
Okay.
this will be up on the replay, IL. Yep.
Yeah, let's wait for Frank. Hey guys, sorry about that delay on getting you guys in here. Steve, Ed, and Frank and Jason. So IL is second cousins with Adam, who is the founder and CEO of WeWork, and was giving us some of the tops of the waves on his controlling demeanor, as well as his charisma,
hubris,
and humor. So keep going from there.
So anyway, essentially in a nutshell, he and my brother had a handshake arrangement where Adam or WeWork was going to finance these clinics, and initially it was thought that it was going to be in a WeWork office space, but then there were some legal elements that made that not viable. But he didn't answer questions. My brother wanted to know A, B, C, D, E, how's this going to work? And there was always some conciliary that was taking on and delaying the process till my brother said, this is just the biggest headache. But I was saying to my guys in the in our pre-meeting that the old adage is that money changes people, and we had a nice relationship with his sister, who he's very close with, who is listed in the S1, and that changed when the riches started coming in. There was he loves to boast. If you ask Adam, he's the one that's responsible for Israel moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, because he met with Jared Kushner at the White House. I remember this story, and communicated to him that that's an important move. But again, when he speaks, people listen. I can't imagine to the tune that he was able to raise, but if you have any questions, I'm comfortable answering, whatever people might want to know on a personal level.
Yeah, that's a great lead in here. So I'm going to pull up this slides show here. Let's start with Jenna. You're a big advocate of this business model. Do what you love, and that this company is going to change the world. So expand on how this company is really changing the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think now more than ever, people are stuck in their houses and they need to get out. And, people are not going to work. You don't have this community feel. You don't have anywhere to really go. So I love this concept from a standpoint of getting a bunch of people with, similar interests. You can learn from people. It's a cooperative working space, but you can get out of the house and you can, tap into a different atmosphere than maybe is afforded to you from your living room or wherever you're working right now. I'm really big on this concept. I love the free coffee and the free amenities. I think it's great. The happy hours that, and I think they have free alcohol, I think I read in there. So I think all that, provides this atmosphere of things that we've been missing during this time. So yeah, big advocate for a concept.
Yeah. So Tom, this mission statement, you're our political architect here. You like big ideas and big missions. So to elevate the world's consciousness, interesting. How'd you come to that, or why do you support that?
Yeah, I support it because it's big, it's visionary, and I think the world has evolved to a place where we understand what WeWork meant. We understand how, now, after going through what we're going through now, how much we value community, how much we value convenience, how much we value a place where we can go conveniently and meet and be productive away from our home, just as an option, but not always. And I think that's exactly sort of at the foundation what WeWork was trying to bring to the world and elevate to the world. And I think there's great hope that will continue.
Yeah. So Doug, I mean, you're kind of a naysayer. You didn't invest in this business. Is that mission statement too big? Is that confusing to you? Is that too fluffy?
Does not pass, as I call, the grunt test. I got to think, burn calories to figure out what the hell that means.
You think that's on purpose?
Possibly a little bit of a mask there.
Mm-hmm. Frank, what are your thoughts on this, grandiose goal for an early stage company? I think Google was, do no evil back in the day when, they were just a search engine.
I mean, look, Pete, I think it comes down to the money, right? I mean, you got to make money, and one way or the other. And so, yeah, I mean, it's grandiose, but at the end of the day, you still got inputs and outputs, and one's a big number and the other's hopefully a little bit smaller number, and hopefully you make a little bit of profit. This is the challenge. And so that's the grandiose that's challenging, I think.
Yeah. So John Miller, you're basically taking on a $1 trillion. I don't know if you guys want to go on. Someone might need to go on mute. John Miller, you're taking on and basically trying to disrupt a multi-trillion-dollar global industry where you've got landlords and you've got lease agreements and you've got 5 or 10-year terms, and you're basically saying, well, I'm just gonna turn this into whatever I want to turn it into. What's your thoughts on that? As you're pro this business model. What does it remind you of?
Well, I'm gonna tag on to something that Jenna said about the pandemic having pried open people's minds. And I think she referenced that more from the user standpoint. I would reference the same thing from a business owner's standpoint, that our recent experience has gotten a lot of business owners and managers to realize that people can be productive without having to come to a place and sit in a chair and be where I can walk up to you face to face and talk to you, and basically allow people the freedom to embrace this sort of a working environment. And when you pile onto that, the comment in the case study that we read about the cost of a office costing the average business $12,000 per year per employee, I think a lot of business operators would warm up to this concept going forward, whereas they weren't ready to do that pre-pandemic.
Steve Ayers, I mean, they're calling renters members. I mean, how much difference is there between a health club and a WeWork?
So you're talking about a business that scaled at 47 billion in lease liabilities over 15 years to 4 billion in cash. That doesn't pass the cash test. But if you look at they want to be a SaaS organization. A SaaS organization grows the revenue, has long-term agreements. As the long-term agreements funds the next revenue growth, and if there's a downturn, they can scale quickly backwards. This one has all the front-end expense with the trailing cash. It doesn't make sense that it's a SaaS company. That's why SaaS companies do long-term agreements. These guys are on a month-to-month, chasing 15 years in contingent liability.
Yeah, so Barry, you're a big proponent of this business model. I mean, do you think you have enough people to backfill these vacancies that, your space as a service is recurring? Might just be with different members or renters?
I think the space and the flexibility in lease term, as well as in not having a tenant to build out a space themselves, really allows for that business to save on the bottom line, save on the top line. You can get in and get out as quickly as you want. And I know because I'm in a WeWork right now.
I was just going to ask you what your coordinates were, and it looks like you're in a WeWork. And are you alone in the WeWork right now?
I am alone right now. It's quiet. It's comfortable. There's a nice energy here when other people are here, and I love coming here. I get my work done, and people are nice and friendly, and everyone wears a mask, so it's cool.
Got it. Emma, what's your thoughts here on space as a service, and can you take health club members, and think about that same business model and apply it to this? Did I lose Emma? I might have lost Emma. Hey, Ed, why don't you take over that answer? I got you on mute.
There we go. So my thoughts are, software as a service. For anybody who's used software as a service, they get their hooks into you, and it is painful to move to a different software. Whereas as this particular company, they tout how easy it is to move if you want to move, or to leave if you don't want to be a member anymore. And I think that it's nothing close to what a software as a service is. And as far as gym membership goes, I don't see it the same as gym membership. I think there's a whole learning curve to get people used to WeWork like a gym membership, right? I think gym membership has been going on for 50 years or longer, and people are used to that. I don't think they're used to the same thing at WeWork. And I will never. I had 40 people in my office building when the pandemic hit, and there's 2 of us that are back now, and the rest will never ever return. Is my guess. They'll work from home forever.
Got it. So Sarah, given your part of the millennial crew, I suspect here, is this like a WeWork or bust where you won't go back into a conventional office? But you'll go into a WeWork, or if I come up with something like we were in a Blender location, which was similar to WeWork, maybe a little bit higher end, but did they create a brand? And would that be sustainable?
They absolutely did create a brand. I think WeWork is, well, the numbers are relatively fuzzy here. I love WeWork as a concept. I think it's great. We have 2 of them in Charlotte. But yeah, I would, if we ever go back into an office for my day job, I'm going to go back kicking and screaming. I love working from home, but I like the option of WeWork to casually go when you need it.
Got it. So over to Sal here. I've got a chart up here that talks about age distribution and company size. If you can see that on the bottom right.
Yeah.
So average age. So basically, you're looking at below 30, 39 and below on the age is the majority here, like 70%, 75%. And then you've got company size, 1 to 2 people, 23%, 3 to 4, 18, 15. So you got these really small startup companies that are inside of there, pros and cons of just having that as a month-to-month client.
Well, I was fascinated with WeWorks when I first saw it, and I saw it with Sarah in New York a number of years ago. And the problem was, it says it reduces the complexity of leasing real estate and makes it a simple membership model. I wrote that down because I liked how they stated that. However, my whole life has been in a membership model, and it's really hard to to keep that member retention. And that's what really worries me about this model. You have these costs of rentals, and yet your clients you don't have them tied up like a traditional lease, and that scares me as an investor. So that's kind of how I look at this. And then the age group of the 39 and below, I mean, obviously that makes sense, but I think you have to be broad-based with the generations to have a little more success and balance.
Yeah. So Jason Stoll, when you take a look at this and you saw this at, in Pittsburgh, obviously you work with a lot of JCCs that have a lot of square footage that they could potentially repurpose. How did you react to that? Did you say, hey, that doesn't make sense, or that does make sense? What was your gut reaction, and how do you feel about it now?
Well, we did do that. Matter of fact, I had, for example, in my location specifically, I had something like 3,000 square feet that had a bunch of free motion equipment in there that got some traffic, but what I ended up doing was converting into a physical therapy space, and we make $75,000 a year off of rent for this guy. So we monetized it pretty easy. Going back to something that Sarah and John had said, in the sales side of things, we say inspired prospects don't need to be sold, right? So I can see how this all ballooned, because you read that statement and you're like, this is inspiring as hell. And whether you want to be an investor or a tenant, the challenge, I think, is I like the mousetrap. I'm with Sarah. I like it. They have uncontrollable risk with this. You can't control, like, they have 15-year leases. I mean, what happens when the market goes down, right? It reminds me a little bit about the McDonald's franchise. They're not really a food company; they're a real estate business. And so I feel like they just missed the right play. But I like the concept at the very least.
Yeah, going back to you, because you've been involved in a couple of startups, and then in the Halo 101, we talked about the total addressable market on each one of the concepts. You're disrupting the real estate industry, commercial real estate industry, and VCs love to mess with legacy business models and old thinking. So, do you think that Adam was kind of poised to be the one to take on and say, hey, I'm going to transform this industry? There's not many industries bigger than the real estate industry.
I believe Adam thought he was. But if you're asking me, my responsibility here was to establish why I don't think, based on this filing, that, or potentially investing in this was a good idea. And I think it's full of BS. I mean, as a Broadway producer, for example, the way that WeWork structured their potential revenue of 280 cities. Are you guys there? 280 possible revenue of $3 billion is so ridiculous. It's like saying that if I took every New York tourist, 65 million of them, at $110 a show, average ticket price, based on the legacy shows, which averages like Lion King and Hamilton, which would be just like the most successful, I'd say that my show can earn $1 billion a year. And if you do further research, you see that it only earns about $250 billion a year. And these guys are saying that they've got $3 trillion market potential. So, I just think if you look through this with a little bit of due diligence, you kind of say, what was SoftBank thinking?
Yeah. So Emma, go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, but let's say the revenue projections are correct. Over the last 5 years, it has proven that the expense scales at the same rate. So even if we double, triple, or quadruple the revenue, the expense line's growing at the same amount. They have not produced, so they can even do this to scale. So that's even worse.
No.
Yeah, no, look, I got a slide on this. So Steve, stay with you here, because you're our software guy. Talk about these business models and how they scale and what the marginal cost is, for WeWork versus the marginal cost for, a Daxco or any of these logos up here.
Yeah, so you look at Salesforce. Salesforce locks in a long-term agreement, gets the subscription first. They run out of sand or space. So they'll spin up another instance, but they already have the subscription to spin up that instance. Okay, let's say they lose their customers. At that point, they can spin down and reduce, and their costs are variable based upon their subscription rate. Whereas when you go in and take on a 15-year lease, and then you do improvements on top of that lease, your exposure is way ahead of your revenue. That's how these SaaS companies can go in and have a 15-year projection on 10 times.
Right. So Ed, I think you own some real estate. You know, how would you look at this if WeWork came to you and said, "Hey, I want to rent this space. I'm going to fill it up. Don't worry about it. You know, I'm basically changing the world, and I'm going to do you a favor, and I'm going to rent some space from you." What are some of the things that would make you nervous?
I would have a great lease. It would, you know, I don't know, for me as a real estate guy, if that would make me too nervous. I love to rent to people, right? Whether he's changing the world or not, I don't care. How much money can he get to me? What's the terms look like? What's it backed by? What's the guarantee? All of those things are the things that I would look at. So I just want to make sure I'm able to get my money out of it.
I mean, that's a great point. So think about a guy like Adam, armed with billions of dollars of cash, running around trying to get the best locations in New York City, as Steve said, with somewhat of a disregard for what his actual lease costs are. And we're going to have Jeff Roseman as a vice chairman of a commercial real estate company on at the end here. But, a lot of the real estate companies in New York City invested in this company, right? They were part of the strategic investment in this company. So what they said was, "Hey, you know what? I don't know if this guy's right. Not sure if I care. I just know that I've got some empty space right now, and this guy's got a big checkbook, right? And he's going to put down a security deposit." So, as we think about, what does it take to make this company work? It takes vacant real estate. It takes someone with capital that wants to actually take over that lease, and he thinks he's going to make a profit on it. However, as Steve says, you can't really make more than a 50% margin on this business in any case, unless you start to open it up and people become members virtually, or people come and they sit in a cafe and they pay to be a part of it. So going back to our health club industry, which is near and dear to my heart, and as everyone else is here, Sal, let me go back to you. Is this different than Lifetime Fitness?
Yeah, because I think the success of Lifetime is the scale of me as a member getting this 128,000 square foot facility. When I walk into WeWork, I walk into an intimate little setting or a little kiosk that where I can I can base my space on my affordability. So I think I think it's a little different, even though they're both a membership model. I just think the appeal is way different. And is that a WeWork on the bottom, Pete? That picture there?
Yes.
Okay.
According to Google Images, it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So that looks like the first time I was on People's Express Airlines. Okay, I'm really dating myself, but that looks like like it's a zoo there in third class, where Lifetime is going to be this beautiful, extraordinary experience. So that doesn't appeal to me at all when I see there. It does not.
So Doug, if WeWork decided that you did not have your own dedicated office, you didn't have your own dedicated desk, and it basically just had all these desks and you just pick and choose. Because when you walk around a WeWork, or Doug, before I go to you, Barry, tell us what the sales process is inside of a WeWork. And then I want to go to Doug and talk about why that maybe was flawed.
I mean, the sales process, basically from my own recollection, it's just, they say, hey, we have a space that'll fit this number of people. And, all the rooms are the exact same. You're not really getting any special bells or whistles, depending whether you're getting a room for one person like I'm in now, or a whole floor, a whole building. So it's all pretty uniform.
Yeah, so Doug, if they said, look, it's kind of open seating every day when you come in here, it's completely open seating. Would that change the scalability of this business, or it would piss people off because I don't want to move around. I want to leave my stuff here.
Well, that's the point of their business, is that you have to bring everything with you. It's really just workspace, and that's, not something that most serious, I think, individuals can cope well with. And so I don't think it works well.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. John Miller, have you seen some of these pop up in your area? And, have you thought about putting workspaces inside of your health clubs?
Well, I'm in Salem, Oregon, so no, we don't have a WeWorks. I've never seen one or been in one, so this is all new to me. However, with the comment that was just made about people needing to leave their stuff, I'm 63 and I'm learning how to work on the cloud. So, and I love it. Basically, I leave with my phone and my iPad, and I have all my stuff. My office is constantly with me. So I think there's something to this, as applying the use of space to our clubs. We are actually in the process of trying to figure out how to eliminate our front desks and go to some form of biometric check-in and have the front of our house be some sort of retail space, coffee shop, health bar, grab and go sort of service that, like the comment was made, you take some space that was a cost center and you turn it into a revenue center. And I think it's something that's we're gonna need to do to continue to, make our clubs something that's unique and an experience that we can deliver on the scale that we're able to in Salem, Oregon.
Yeah. So Jenna, back to you. Is COVID, somehow helpful to WeWork because people are shedding their other offices but may want to have some presence or some meeting spot? Or do you think, the work at home and basically just going in Wi-Fi and going to sit in a hotel lobby or, meeting in a Starbucks, like do they get leapfrogged at some point? Or do you think, they might be better positioned now?
I think they're in a better position. I think there's only so many good places to sit in a hotel lobby for co-working. I think when it comes down to having an actual space, there's not a lot of those things. You can't really go to coffee shop, at least where I am. So yeah, I think COVID's really strengthening this business model, especially when people just need to get out of their house. It's something to do, and we all are jumping at any opportunity to go and, take a trip. So WeWork seems like killing two birds with one stone.
Yeah. So Emma, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, do you think that because of the COVID and the available real estate, that'll help them drive their acquisition costs down?
Yeah, I mean, I think they should get lower leases. The question's going to be, and I don't have any insight into this, what leases they were able to cut on rent abatements or deferrals. Shara, do you have a idea on that? Good.
I just have a follow-up question, Jenna. I really like your thought process here, and I'm curious if you think post-COVID, people using this instead of going to their previous office, do we think it's going to be more people paying monthly, like if we're talking on an individual level, or do we see it going to be like a drop-in or a guest fee, if you will?
Yeah, it was funny because I was thinking, like, this looks like really sounds like boutique fitness model.
Yep.
I think the idea of like a credit with a membership, so like you get 4 visits, 8 visits, 12 visits, like that makes sense, especially if people are like, I now have a work from home space, but maybe I want, and maybe it's like class packs. Like this is very much like boutique fitness. So that's exactly what we're on the same page there. Yeah.
Yep. That's what I was thinking too.
And Sarah, just to that, we did a big study in the search space in the UK, for example. So 91% of people for the rest of their life want to do a portion of work at home.
Yep.
And then probably somewhere between 2 and 3 days collaboratively. So not coming together to work, coming together to talk and meet and exercise and get to know each other and push ideas forward and brainstorm. So I concur. I think this is, I don't think I was supposed to be arguing for the model, but here we go.
Yeah.
No, that's good. That's good. Jason Stoll, you know, if I called you and I'm pitching you on Integrity Square, and you know, I want to become your advisor, and you say, hey, what office are you in? And I say, oh, I'm in the WeWork on 29th and Madison. How do you feel about that? Does that paint anything in your mind about my company or me?
No, you know, again, going back to the sales, you know, people don't care about your stuff, they care about their stuff. So they want to know that you can deliver on whatever they need. So if the solution is something that a service that Integrity Square can provide, and you have the credibility and the experience to do it, I don't care where you work out of. I don't think a WeWork would in any way detract from your expertise.
Good. Ayal, what do you think? I can't hear you.
I'm here. Got me, Pete? All right. So I think numbers are going, while I've looked at the PR on what is coming out of WeWork, and they're suggesting that their business model is you know, on the right track. I think it was as a result of COVID, more people are going to be inclined to work at home. And I think they're going to lose their clientele. They're going to lose the mass number of people that were gravitating towards WeWork. I think the model that might theoretically work is if you convince Fortune 500 companies to take big square footage space in the WeWorks to reduce their cost of per person employee, and have all the management responsibilities, you know, of running the office fall under the WeWork umbrella. And then if you want to do a half and half for your employees, allow them to spend 50% of their time, whatever that is, at home, the ultimate cost of having that empty space would be lower than if you buy a building in New York City and, you know, for your big Fortune 500 company. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. You know, from my standpoint, we were going to go into a WeWork. We ended up going into a place called Blender. And the main reason why I did not go into a WeWork is because I didn't want people like you to think that my company was being bootstrapped or that I just started Integrity Square. Okay, so there was an undercurrent, you know, and Barry's in the WeWork now by himself is like the 2% occupancy rate, it sounds like. But there was this stigma attached to WeWork that you must be starting up a new company in order for you to be in a WeWork because you're trying to be frugal. Okay, and that also you probably would be a credit tenant to the point where you could actually get a 5-year lease, right? At the same time, I'm not a guy I don't do multi-year leases on anything because I want to be mobile. So I kind of like the idea of WeWork, but I didn't want to be in a WeWork. So we became inside of a Blender because I deemed it as a PR. Somebody said to me one time, well, if you go into WeWork, you're definitely the oldest guy in WeWork, right? So there was this stigma attached to like, this is a millennial movement and this movement doesn't really include you. So just something to think about, you know, when you look at this. The other thing is Lifetime Fitness has come out, and obviously Lifetime Fitness is now called Lifetime Athletic. They're doing mixed use developments, and they're trying to say, hey, look, what WeWork has done, that's real interesting. Why don't I just charge somebody $600 a month in somebody's new developments, and I'll give you a workspace. And I also got a shower, I got a group exercise class, I got a coffee shop, and I got a cafe, and I actually want you to be here. So, you know, Frank, if there's anything going on in Little Rock related to a WeWork or imitators, or, you know, I've been inside of your clubs, like you've got space where you could potentially accommodate that. What are your thoughts? Or do you say, I don't want to be helping people like with their Wi-Fi?
No, look, I mean, I think, you know, we've always said for our clubs, Pete, that we always wanted to be the third place, right? Homework and then the club. And really now since COVID's hit, we're talking about, hey, we want to be in place. Home and work are for the most part the same place. So why don't you work and be a club all the time? And I think as multi-purpose clubs, that's really part of what we're trying ourselves. So I think there's some merit to what Lifetime's trying to do there.
Yeah, Pete, I've been involved in 3 clubs that have done this very successfully. One in Belgium was a startup, and they charged extra membership. And then Equinox, of course, Sports Club LA, like we were doing that here. They hadn't moved to actually doing a business membership. But I tell you what, I would sit there all day and work and watch people just constantly go to F&B, like the amount of money they were making on just all the extras that happen, let alone turning it into a membership. And then there was one other business in Cologne, actually, one of the upmarket 24s had done that as well. Same thing, charge you a little bit more and you get all that ancillary rev as well. And you get people spending more time there, so they're more likely to stay and bring their friends and have a meeting and buy a coffee. So definitely a huge trend.
Yeah, so Sal, I was just going to call on you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I want to dovetail on what Emma was saying. Being part of a national sales team where our team is all over the place. I mean, normally, pre-COVID, I'm 3 weeks a month traveling. Okay, and I would love to be in a New York City where I can go and hang my hat after I have a call at 10 and one at 4. I got a couple hours where I can just get some work done, because it's hard to find space when you're in a big city. And so that's very attractive to me. And if I could do that at a Lifetime or at a commercial facility, and I'd spend some money there too, lunch, coffee, whatever. That's a cool spot. I like it.
So when you think about the real estate group seeing this phenomenon, one of the responses that they had was like, here's some floors, feel free to pay up and, good luck with it. I know that you just raised $4 billion and I'm more than happy to send you my wire instructions. Is this a first mover advantage? Sarah, back to you for a minute on, is this brand sustainable, or is, architecting physical locations not something that's really something that you can put a moat around?
I think it's sustainable. I think they grew too quickly. I think now the way our world is, like, Charlotte doesn't need 2 or 3 WeWork locations. We could use 1, right? And it's being in the right location, and then you don't want empty offices just sitting around. So to answer your question, I think it could be sustainable, but they have to unload some real estate if possible to keep that going.
Yeah. So Ed, back to you, and then we're going to take a break here. Planet Fitness started in 1993. You didn't really get traction until, I don't know, probably really like 10 years later. And then everyone in the industry said, oh, that business model doesn't work. They're like, yeah, it actually does. If you were running WeWork and maybe you didn't have the bravado and be a control freak, if you will, about it, is this a franchisable business?
It is. We talked a little bit in our small group about this. There's other areas where it's a similar business model as this that do work. So one that I would give you that's franchisable is salon suites. So if you look at those, they're growing throughout the United States. There's 400 or 500 of them in the United States. There's a landlord. Somebody rents space from that landlord and then turns around and rents it to people who want small little salons, right? The same thing with Airbnb. There's people out there that are renting people's homes and then turning around and renting it to somebody else through Airbnb. So I think the model is workable. There's things out there that work similar to it, so it can work.
Great. Anyone want to rebut that, or you think there's something special that needs to be all corporately owned? All right. Let's take a 5-minute break. Good to see you all again. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about all the interesting exhibits that were disclosed in the documents, and we're going to tear through each one of those for 30 minutes, and then we're going to have Jeff Roseman come on. So I'll see you at 7:05.
2-seaters to like 3. This is very, very not busy, at least on my floor. We have another WeWork in Midtown, which, I mean, every time I'm there, it's dead. You could run around on your head and no one would even see you. So
yeah. So to Jenna's point, it's like a boutique studio sometimes without any people in it. So you kind of lose that energy and vibe. All right, let's go. I'm going to do a screen share here. We're going to go through some of these exhibits that were in the S1 here and get people's take on this. So when Google went public and when Facebook went public, the founders of that company were able to negotiate where they basically were able to continue to keep voting control of the business. So what they did was they changed their stock to every share of stock that they own gets 20 votes. Okay, in every company, when you put together an operating agreement or a shareholder agreement, every share gets 1 vote. Okay, so this is called supermajority voting rights. Okay, if you're an investor and you see someone with supermajority voting rights, you know, besides Google and Facebook, like what entrepreneur in the world would you give this to? You know,
Elon
Ed,
Musk, Steve
Elon
Jobs.
Musk. Okay, so Elon Musk, Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs did not have supermajority voting rights. Bill Gates did not have supermajority voting rights. So this was like a new idea that came around, and investors said, you know what, this idea is so big that I'm not going to concern myself with going against the CEO or going against the founder. I'm basically not only investing in this company, but I'm trusting the judgment of this entrepreneur. So Ed, you've been in several different businesses. What's your history with if somebody came to you with an opportunity such as this? Would this be a non-starter, or you might be willing to listen?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting, right? You talk about Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, right? And you all talk about those knowing where they ended up, but not from where they started. I don't know. I can't think of anybody, you know, especially something that's not, you know, not throwing off cash, not profitable. You'd be hard pressed for me to get involved in it. And I've been dragged along in a few of these, by the way, where you know, a few stockholders had a majority and dragged the rest of us along unsuccessfully.
Yeah. Doug, back to you. Do you kind of take a leap of faith? I mean, you take a leap of faith by investing in WeWork anyway at a crazy valuation, but you know, do you just kind of say, you know what, I don't think I'm ever going to go against because what they think is the best thing for the company because they're inside the company? Or do you say, hey, look, rules of gravity kind of, you know, or have to be the same at all times?
Yeah, I think I would not be comfortable with that, especially considering the growth that they're experiencing, the hype around the business, and the money that's pouring in. And with most of their sites not kicking off cash, as Ed said, that no starter for me.
Yeah, Ayal, back to you, since you know Adam intimately well. Does he raise money and give up control? A lot of entrepreneurs look at opportunities like this and they say, hey, the pie is this big today, but with this additional capital, the pie could be this big. So I'm willing to give up some of my control rights in order to get the money, right? So what an entrepreneur is trying to do with this exhibit 13 and 14 is basically get his cake and eat it too. Right? He wants control of the business and he doesn't want anybody telling him what to do, but money is supposed to talk.
I can't buy into this. I mean, I struggle with this personally to invest in anybody. I mean, it's a red flag to me that someone wants this level of control and needs this level of control. And it's not just about the voting rights. It's almost every element of this filing, you know, with the board and with the incentive compensation and with succession planning. I mean, it is a huge red flag that suggests that this guy is a narcissist. And to me, that's a dangerous concern, especially if you're, I mean, well, if you're a day trader, you're not maybe going to consider that, but I don't know how SoftBank doesn't, you know, say something.
Right. So Jenna, you know, is there a situation, well, put yourself in the shoes of the CEO of this business, you're CEO of a business, and you started it, you know how it works, you've got a view of what's around the corner. You know, what's your argument for this?
I mean, I think it would come down to people trusting that you're going to do the right thing. Reading further through this, I don't think this guy wants to do the right thing. I think he's in for himself. So putting myself in you'd have to get trust from people that you act in good faith and you want what's best for the company, not just what you're about. So I guess if you're that type of person, you've shown that track record, then this makes sense. but personally, I don't even think that you should need this if you surround yourself with people you want to get other outside opinions. If you're in the business all the time, you can't get that kind of perspective. And that's the whole purpose of a board of directors, is to help you see outside of the business and to provide different industry knowledge. So this, to me, like, why even have a board of directors? You just supersedes everyone anyways and can replace.
It's a great, that's a great point. So Jason Stoll, why did SoftBank throw money at this without regard for the fine print?
I honestly have no idea. I mean, the SoftBank leader, CEO, I mean, he was known kind of as a visionary and able to see the future of the markets. I honestly, after doing some diligence of reading this and then doing my own independent, I still have no idea why that happened. And hopefully somebody has a better answer than that.
Yeah, Frank, do you have one, or just concur?
No, well, no. Look, I think I concur with Jason. Right? I think this guy looked at Adam as his mentee and his son or whatever. Right? I mean, to a certain extent, he just gave him a ton of money and just continued to invest that in him. So logic doesn't necessarily follow, I don't think, based upon the research that I saw out there.
Right. John Mill, yeah, Barry.
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, we do quite a bit of work with some of SoftBank's, portfolio companies. And I think first it's important to remember that SoftBank is a Korean, investment arm. So in the Asian culture, gambling is very, very big. They look to take it depends on the company, but a controlling stake, and they just throw a ton of capital to really take in these life-changing, potentially incredibly lucrative ideas, which when you look at Uber, which is another company that they invested in with Travis Kalanick and how that culture imploded and led to his ousting, I think they seem to be doing they seem to think that money will fix any challenge, which I think is totally the wrong approach. So I think that gambling standpoint is important to remember given just the culture.
I think that's a great point. And when we went through the Peloton case, I did a slide and we had a spaceman, and I said, what do venture capitalists really want to do besides, transforming industries? They want to dominate and they want to destroy, right? That's what they want to do. So if I'm going to dominate and I want to destroy, then I might actually want to back a dictator. And I'll say that, with a straight face, because I'm basically having this guy go and take on the entire real estate industry, change leasing forever, piss a lot of people off along the way, right? Because now, landlords are now, you got to work with me. If you have empty space, you might not be able to rent it to anyone. So, when you talk about, Sarah, when I asked you, does this brand exist? Like, part of the way to get a competitive advantage if you're a venture capital firm is to be the most funded company out there, and that becomes your competitive advantage. There's a guy I wanted to have on at the end, but he's in Dubai right now. But he ran the workspace that we were at, IL, Amro, and he was out there raising capital, and he showed me a slide that said 92% of all the capital raised in the co-working space went to WeWork. Okay, so think about that as that becomes the competitive advantage, right? So when you got a charismatic entrepreneur with a big idea, with some good traction, okay, people start to say, you know what, I'll let that pass, okay? Because this guy's gonna create a $300 billion company. I'm gonna laugh my way all the way to the bank. And if he trips up a little, so be it. The idea is big enough and there's enough growth that growth will make it go away. All right, so then we go. Yes.
Pete, I also reckon it's just even from the vision point of view. I mean, we deal with a lot of people in India, in Asia, in all these other places, and they literally believe in the American dream, and everyone wants a piece of that. So I think at a visionary level, definitely, as well as domination and all of that stuff, but they really believe in that, would be my observation as well.
Yeah. So
Pete, the last thing I would say,
yeah,
look, I'm sorry, I get that, but at the end of the day, economics still have to come into play at some point. I mean, this thing never made money and hemorrhaged money like crazy. So there's some reality that comes into play at some point, I would think. Anyway, that's just me. I'm a conservative.
No, I think that's a great point. So Tom, Richard, you know, when you take a look at this, is there a fear of missing out that you start to disregard some of the principles that Frank's talking about?
Yeah, I think there is. I'm almost thinking like an artist and people who invest in an artist early or a record label, that when they used to invest in bands and they'd see talent and they'd feel like this person's got such a either a vision or a charismatic force, and they see people buying into it. You know, they can see people's eyes glazing over and just really buying into what this person is selling. That I think he must have become just a really compelling force for people to get behind, and it sort of makes sense. It sort of makes sense that he would have all the voting rights because he's the biggest asset to the company. There are other companies doing this that were profitable, but he's the one that has been able to convince people and get behind him. So he must have this incredible talent. And it's kind of like the way Eyal's been describing him is kind of exactly how I've pictured him and imagined him. So there's
Sal, let's harken this back to the health club industry, because the first several WeWorks were at 95, 98% capacity, right? So if you're an investor and you're walking through, you know, the top 5 WeWorks in New York City, and you see, you know, all these, you know, it's bustling with activity. It's all these entrepreneurs and millennials and free coffee and, you know, people jumping over each other. You know, does the space tour taint your fundamental principles?
I can see where that would have really been tempting to invest in it big time, because I remember when I first saw it, I was impressed. I was big time impressed. And if I saw it hustle and bustle and I had money to invest, I could drink that Kool-Aid. I really could. The one thing that concerns me a little bit is a touch on leadership a little bit, where I don't think, if he would have spent more time developing his people instead of him just mowing over people, I think he would have had a much better time of it. You know, you got to be a steward as a CEO, and I think he was a steward of his own ambitions, you know, so.
Yeah, fair point. You know, John Miller, you know, when you look at the growth and you see, you know, the ambition to go into new markets without really knowing, you know, a lot about the intricacies of these office markets. You know, is growth what killed this company?
There we go. Sorry. I don't know. I've been listening to this conversation, and you know, I think about SoftBank, and I don't know. I think most people feel this way, that you know, if you see somebody that's many times more successful than you on a balance sheet, you tend to associate smarts with their level of success. And but at the end of the day, I'm amazed at the number of times that what, in my estimation, should be a really smart person can do the stupidest things. And that's what this makes me think of, is you had these guys at SoftBank and others that were motivated purely by emotion. Because, you know, even if you walk through, you do the tour and you see this bustling place, you also do your due diligence. I mean, I'm smart enough to go, you know, are they just cherry picking what I'm seeing? What about the rest of the places? You know, how full are they, and et cetera. But yeah, I just I do think there's a concept here. I do think the leasing business is going to change, just like the retail business has changed. And I think these guys got sucked into being the next Amazon in real estate. And I think they just moved too fast. And unlike Amazon, there's some real hard costs that just don't scale as well and as quickly in this model.
So Steve Ayers, so put yourself in the shoes of Adam, and SoftBank comes and says, I really like what you're doing. The guy spends like 22 minutes. There's a podcast I listened to. Like, this guy from SoftBank like came in, you know, took a car service, walked through one WeWork got Adam in the car and said, look, I'll give you $2 billion at, you know, a $20 billion pre-money valuation. And you say, well, yeah, I want voting control. I want this as a salary. You know, I own the WeWork name. I'm going to sell it back to you for $6 million. And he says, that's cool. That's fine. I'll send you the paperwork on Monday. Like, do you have an obligation not to do that deal?
I think at that time, as a private company, you have the obligation a little bit to yourself. I mean, I kind of titled this from both sides: too much money, too fast, no oversight. And I think you can take that angle from either side of this business. I think the growth was fine, but I think what was fueling it caused bad decisions. I think it was greed and ego. And I think they went in, and it's okay to have a $35 million Gulfstream. It's okay to do all this stuff and have those voting shares if you're creating EBITDA value and all this, but I don't think it's his responsibility to govern who's going to invest. I think they're experienced investors and they have the responsibility to do their own due diligence.
Yeah, Frank?
No, I concur with that, right? So got a responsibility to do their own underwriting. I mean, they're writing the check.
Yeah. So, you know, Barry, when you look at companies like this and they're on this rocket ship ride, what are some of the things that go through your head on how to control the entrepreneur? You know, do they come to you and say, I want a CFO, and I want a CFO that has the same, you know, type of inertia that I have, or I want to have someone who's going to actually, you know, be my numbers guy and pull me back? Or does a company like this just gotta go off the train because there is no oversight and you can't even bring in people to buffer that?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be done strategically. They have to find that individual that is going to actually add value and hire someone that, you know, not pay them a big paycheck because you have funds, but really find someone that is an actual value add for the long term, or whatever the goals of the business are.
Agreed. So when we take a look at, we think back to the Cycle for Survival class, you know, and we talked about, you know, companies with initiatives that are related to charity and being bigger than themselves and giving back. You know, we've really kind of crossed the line between what a company is set up for, which is to generate profits, right? And to create change in what they're doing and to serve their members or to solve a frustration. You know, the fact, I've never seen this in any document before, by the way, you know, that they basically are committing to a charitable giving, or they would actually give up half of their ridiculous number of voting rights shares. You know, Emma, does this make you feel good about them? Does this make it seem like, why is this in here?
The whole thing is weird. It just felt like tokenism to me. And it just, I don't know, it felt like, I don't know, maybe it came from the right place, but everything surrounding it was so off and odd. It just felt like part of the ridiculous ask to me.
I think it's the intention was to offset all the garbage beforehand, all the inner dealings and the sale of $6 million. It was like, hey, maybe, and I don't believe it either. I think if there's anything to this, it's for tax gain, for tax sheltering. It's not because they want to do good for the world, based on what I know. And just to touch on what you said previously, or what you brought up, I think the WeWork case study in many different ways is going to address and be used for years to come, because I think there's a psychological or sociological element in this as well, which is groupthink. If you've got Jamie Dimon and you've got Benchmark and you've got SoftBank all drinking the Kool-Aid, all of a sudden, you know, everyone thinks, okay, if I see some issues with this, maybe I'm wrong, because all these titans of industry have fallen in love with Adam Neumann. And what do we also know? That love is blind. Right? I mean, in personal, professional, if you fall in love with a guy or a concept, you start overlooking. And I think that's a huge element in what ultimately happened here with WeWork.
I think that's a excellent point. You know, on that note, you know, Sal, do you think that when you've got those types of people that are involved, each one of them thinks they all did the diligence, but actually nobody did it?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's almost like an investment frenzy is what it sounds like. And if I see that SoftBank goes, I may say, oh my God, if they did it, I should jump in and maybe not do the right type of due diligence. So I can almost see where that can happen.
Yeah, so to finish up here on some of the exhibits. So another crazy thing is that, he kept the We name, even though he started the company, and then he sold it back to the company for $6 million. Okay, so you just take a second and digest that. Like, you start a company, okay, and then you figure out a way legally to remove the brand that you've created, and then you sell it back to other investors. Okay, so the funny part here is that charitable giving is 17, and then 18 is basically, raping and pillaging the company, for what you've built that you already got equity value for, right? So, these exhibits were like a wild ride, okay? And then to Steve's point, the lease obligations here. So basically selling short-term space, and we're entering into these really long-term relationships with landlords that you're not getting much accommodation from, and they're willing to take your money. So there are a couple of other things here that you don't see in things that we do, in our middle market or lower middle market or independently owned companies. Frank, I'm assuming you've never asked your partners if I could take a $7 million loan from the company and I'll pay it back when I feel like it.
No, and look, Pete, I'm just sitting here looking at all these exhibits. If it ultimately would have gone public, I'm like, gosh, this is brilliant. The guy told everybody exactly what he was going to do, and he got away with it. So, but
that's true. That's
it
true.
didn't ultimately pan out that way. So
yeah. So to the point that was made before, I think it was Jenna or Emma, but the fact that all these provisions and all this voting rights in and of itself wasn't enough, where he basically also said, I can fire anybody on the board whenever I want. Okay, so this guy wants to run a private company effectively with public money, do whatever he wants. He's taking money out of the company left and right. He's selling back the name that he created that was already part of the company. He's taking loans out of the company. He's got planes, trains, and automobiles. And the reality is that finally the market said, this is bullshit. And you know what? Like, I'm not backing this company because I've lost faith in the CEO. And oh, by the way, the company's losing $100 million a week. Okay, so you can only grow so fast. And as we all know from the health club industry and from the boutique fitness industry, it takes time to ramp up a membership base. And for some reason, they forgot about the ramp up phase and that you have to pay rent. So with that, let me bring on Jeff Roseman, who is a fellow Halo certified graduate and the vice chairman of one of the largest commercial real estate companies in New York City, and a good friend of Integrity Square and myself personally. So Jeff, thank you for jumping on here with us.
Sure, good to see everybody. Thanks, Pete.
Awesome.
I'm sorry I missed. It sounds like it was a great case study because it's a fascinating company for sure.
Yeah. So from a standpoint of how WeWork kind of shook up the landscape in Manhattan, and you've been doing this for your entire career, give us a little insight into how the landlords received the company, how you kind of probably originally thought about it, then maybe you kind of waver like, hey, maybe this is really the next big $100 billion company, or maybe it's not, just that you're on the pulse of the real estate industry.
Well, I guess, look, New York real estate at its most basic is what, 500 million square feet, I think, in the city. I think that's the total. At any given point, you probably have anywhere from 10 to 20% vacancy. That's a lot of vacant space. So when a guy comes along who's got a solution to a lot of vacant space, he brought some of the smartest real estate guys I know to their knees, basically. He had this incredible gift of BS, combined with a set of, steel balls that he just was able to, put this story out. And look, there are some elements of his business which were brilliant, I think. But if you think about it, his whole idea of co-working, again, people sitting around a table, drinking a keg of beer and playing ping pong, in hindsight, probably, was not, maybe it could go over in a couple of spots, but, the flex office space component, companies like Regis have been doing it forever. There's a real market for that. And unfortunately, that's not what he started at. And I think he just, he was, to me, the biggest sort of, intrigue about him was his ability to call audibles. I mean, starting from the very beginning, the first, he got into the business because he was looking for space for himself. He was in the kids' clothing business. He was a manufacturer, right? And he found this space and he said, gee, it's too big for me. I'm going to, divide it up. And then boom, he said, you know what, let's do this all over. And so he Audible there, and then calling an Audible, sort of shifting from the co-working space to what he called enterprise, which was great. Companies like Amazon, IBM, they don't know where they're going to be in 3 years in terms of what their needs are going to be. So he provided a great service for companies like that, but clearly too big, too fast, and caught the end of what you said. I mean, there were no adults watching him. He had the free reign of the cookie jar, and you know how that turns out.
You want to fire off questions for Jeff? Sal?
Yeah, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really enjoyed your comments just there. What do you think? What would have happened if that would have come up? That business model would have started after COVID. Like if it came out later this year, what do you think would be the take in New York City?
I think people would run to him quicker. Honestly, I mean, there's more space, more empty space now. Look, there's going to be a lot of creative, smart people coming into the market now with ideas as to what to do. So, but yeah, it is surprising that I heard you say Jamie Dimon and Softel on sort of on the investment side, but across the board, most landlords, there were a few that didn't want to touch him and came out publicly, and I give those guys credit because they're big owners in the city and they smelled it from a mile away.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, Barry.
Hey, Jeff. Thank you for joining us. So some news came out a couple weeks ago that a SPAC might be looking to take WeWork public. Would you consider, if you had a SPAC, taking WeWork public, or would you, what would your thought process be?
Well, not truly my world, but look, there is a place for the business in New York. There is a place where people do need short-term space, and so I know Notel filed bankruptcy, and same thing. They will emerge, and my company actually invested a lot of money in them when they were sort of a startup, and so. There is a place for it. Again, how big and how much space, and truly they're competing with landlords, so that's sort of the little bit of the gray area, but I think property owners are still willing to take a gamble on the business because there is, again, you look at a company like Regis, I think it's IWG is who owns them. I mean, big, great company. They provide a need, you need 6-month space. That's where you go.
Yeah. Ed?
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for joining us. Hey, the question I have is what do you see as far as changes in New York City real estate right now, given the pandemic? And what's your take on what do you think is going to happen over the next 5 years?
It's a great question, Ed. And look, because I'm in the business, I obviously am very bullish and my real specialty is retail. That's my world. But on the office side, what I'm hearing, and it makes a lot of sense. Number one, I don't really believe work from home works. It works to some degree. It is a 1 to 2 day a week, maybe 2 day a week proposition. But speaking for myself with kids and dog and doorbells, and it's not that conducive. It's not conducive to younger people building cultures at companies. So for a lot of reasons, I think that there'll be an integration. And the reality is companies are going to need more space because, how the companies used to, put people side by side in a bullpen, that's not going to happen anymore. So some of the bigger companies, while they may have less people there, are going to need just as much space, if not more space. And so, I've been around through a bunch of crises and after 9/11, no one was ever going to go above a 10th floor in an office building because of the horrific videos and pictures that we saw. And, over time, things find a way to sort of get back to where they were. So, I'm still pretty bullish on the office market, and as I am on the retail market. There's always new sort of concepts coming along in the fitness world. Look, 5 years ago, there wasn't as many concepts as there were pre-pandemic now. And so, there's always a need for space, and especially in New York City.
Good, John?
Yeah, my question kind of tags on to the last one. If you would, Jeffrey, comment on more broadly what you see happening in the next 5 years with commercial real estate, and as it applies to me, a guy that is in a small market, and I'm leasing about 200,000 square feet of commercial real estate.
What market are you in, John?
Salem, Oregon.
Mm-hmm. So your question, again, I don't want to repeat what I said in terms of where the market is going, or where.
Well, just what the events of the past year has done to commercial real estate more broadly. I know that in Salem, there's an awful lot of empty space that didn't exist a year ago. And I know there's a lot of space where people have leases but are now questioning the necessity for that space going forward. Just again, broadly thinking, supply and demand, as the supply of space goes up, that has an effect on the value of that space. Sure. And I just, in my situation, how do I look at that, and what should be my mindset towards the folks that I deal with in leasing my space?
Well, look, you want to be a tenant in this market more than you want to be a property owner, that's for sure. And it's going to be a tenant's market for the next, probably 3 to 5 years, especially if you're leasing sort of larger space. But again, I do believe in the long-term future of business districts. I do believe that, again, company cultures, it's paramount to companies to have people sitting outside their mentor's office to be able to run inside and ask questions and go out for drinks with coworkers. And I don't know how you build or how a company builds a culture with everybody being, in their own bedroom and sort of not getting together and just not feeling the vibe of the company. So the next few years are going to be, very difficult on the real estate side. But again, It's going to be a tenant's market. And, you know, whether you have leases coming up now or not, it would be a great time to start talking to your owners and renegotiating and locking in if you're of the same mindset, because you know, they're probably going to be willing to make incredible deals now that they may not in you know, another year or two.
Yeah. Just a comment in response, and this relates to something Pete put out a few weeks ago, and I agree, and it's great hearing it from you that people getting together is not going to go away, and that bodes well for my industry and particularly the segment of the fitness industry that I'm in and committed to. And you know, there's been talk about the fitness industry going virtual and everyone's going to do their version of Peloton. I think Peloton's done great, will continue to do great. But I think doing what we do and bringing people together and doing it well is going to be in high demand.
Yeah, no, look, if you listen to the pundits on TV, we're going to work from home, we're going to work out from home, and we're going to shop from home. So you know, we're going to be shut-ins, basically, everybody. And I don't understand the whole, you know, and that's, you know, the pundits, but obviously that doesn't make a lot of sense to most.
Yeah. Yeah, Jason.
Thank you for being with us. This is a fantastic opportunity. So first, thank you. I think it's fascinating that Adam was able to take advantage of like whole romanticized startup culture that we all were seeking, but we couldn't get into for tech reasons, whatever. So I think that was great. But relating it back to fitness, we talk a lot about the member journey, and you know, once you get them in the door, how are you getting them engaged and plugged in and connected, right? And you know, when you go somewhere and you show me your mission statement, then show me your financials, and they don't lie. You know, WeWork 83% of their revenue, only 17% of the revenue was ancillary. So do you, in your experience, feel that the missed opportunity wasn't that there wasn't a there, but that once they got them plugged in, they never were able to deliver on creating connection and community and culture? They just said, here you go, good luck.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, again, I mean, that's a big part of it. Yeah, I don't think, to me, Adam Newman was not I don't think he thought ahead. He was a very spontaneous guy, and I think everything he did, and it obviously is reflected later, was sort of on the fly. And you know, it was a revolving door of people who worked for him in high level positions, except for, you know, his wife and his brother-in-law and some others. So it just you know, in hindsight, again, it's hindsight clearly, but there are so many holes in his model. But again, I think the business itself, you know, has a place.
Good point, Steve.
So living down, and thank you for joining us. Living down in Orlando, Florida, we hear reports of, you know, in Midtown Manhattan, 15% of the office space is down, a third of the storefronts are vacant. Do you see that? One, is that true? And second, do you see that as a play for luxury residential to move in, or would you see that more of a buying opportunity for, let's say, an Equinox?
A great question. Yeah, the vacancy rates I think are accurate. You know, and the vacancy rate is, you know, is empty office space. You know, that doesn't include all the people who are still paying rent but not going to the office. You walk through Midtown Manhattan these days, and it's pretty tough. And same thing with the retail. I do think there's going to be some residential conversion. They did that after 9/11 downtown, and it worked. It worked well. They converted a lot of antiquated office buildings into condos and rental apartment buildings. And it was a great solution. And, you know, now downtown is a thriving community, when way back when it was a 9 to 5 and the streets rolled up Friday at 4 o'clock. So, you know, there are some smart urban planners out there that are going to come up with ways to sort of figure this out. and it is an opportunity. I mean, it's certainly in the fitness world and in the restaurant world, there is a lot of second generation space, that somebody else busted their back to build, and unfortunately, and spent a lot of money on plumbing and air conditioning and all the expensive stuff. And I've done quite a few deals in the past few months on second generation restaurants that guys must have spent $3-4 million in, and a guy's coming in and literally going to paint it and buy new chairs and open up. And as sad as that is on one side, it is opportunistic on the other, and there's going to be a lot of that. So, and in every market, I'm sure.
Jeffrey, curious of thoughts. You brought up Equinox and downtown New York City. What do you think the hit's going to be of COVID to Hudson Yards and related, and Westfield and the Oculus downtown? Do you think it's going to be significant?
Well, it's funny. I toured Hudson Yards recently with the related guys. Look, those guys are the smartest guys in the room. I think that they are going to, they are actively courting companies and businesses. They're going to lease the department store space. They have an office company, and I don't know that it's been announced yet, but I know they had Facebook. They have a couple companies looking at it. I think they'll figure out a way to, re-energize that. The retailers, most of the retailers there aren't paying base rent anyway. So once they do open back up again, it'll look, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but I do believe that related is patient and smart. The Oculus, to me, has been a debacle since day one. I mean, it is just a cavernous. I can't even, without being disrespectful, it is such a disaster from every standpoint, in my opinion. I've brought so many of my clients through there, and then I would walk out and I say, you know what, I can't even in good conscience let you consider this, because this is pre-COVID. So post-COVID, they're even in worse straits, I think. I hope nobody here works for Westfield, but they've got some real issues. And whereas Brookfield Place, on the other hand, downtown, they've done a good job. They might have shot too high with luxury at one time, but everybody sort of miscalculates a little bit with tenancy. But I'm not concerned about related. I think they're going to figure it out. You looked surprised when I said that, but
I think, personally, I think Harlem has a better chance of getting revitalized than Hudson Yards. My intuition, given the enormous amount of investment that's gone down over there, that people aren't going to gravitate there as much, especially now after COVID. Those luxury retail stores, sure, if they can get a Facebook to take over 70% of that space, it's a huge win for them. Fantastic. But as far as location,
yeah,
I think it's going to be a while before that's a hip. I don't think it's meatpacking district for years.
Right. No, fair enough. I think that's right. It'll take probably longer than some of the other parts of the city.
Hey, Jenna, do you have a question? Okay. All right. Well, Jeff, any last question here for Jeff? And I want to go through some of the WeWork financials. Good. All right, Jeff. Thanks for hopping on with us. Great intel.
Thanks.
Appreciate
guys.
you. Thanks, man. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right, great. Okay, so Jeff, a humble guy, but he's the vice chairman of Newmark, which is one of the top 3 real estate groups, and he runs their retail division. So he's the guy that I call when I need to check something out. So he's kind enough to get on here. What I want to do is I just want to spend a couple of minutes before we get off on the financials, and let me see if I can make this a little bigger. On the current slide. Okay. All right. Can everybody see that now? Yep. Okay, cool. All right. So the point that what we talked about, one is these are the financials that were put into a presentation that the company did in 2014. And if you take a look at this, there's a couple of interesting things going on. One is for a company that is just in the WeWork space to have the bravado to add in We Live, which is basically becoming a residential landlord, right? And doing rental condos because you want to have people to live and breathe the WeWork lifestyle, We Live. And now We Work Everywhere, which is another membership, but doesn't even show up in the next 5 years. And then they also did another concept, which was called We Rise. Sarah, you want to give some commentary on them trying to dip their toe into our industry?
Yeah, so the one that I saw, Pete, was Rise by We in the Financial District location. It was beautiful, was meeting with the owner. You walk in, you had the membership card similarly to any other health club, front desk. You had to, the one thing that was weird was you had to leave the WeWork office space, go down many floors, and then re-enter the fitness center. That could have been a little smoother, but beautiful. I mean, millennials dream, just top line products everywhere. You walk in, there's cardio. Wasn't a ton of strength, old school strength. It was more of like TRX straps and things of that nature, but very, very hip.
That's where I am right now, that very building.
Yeah, it's cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So early on, even in 2014, if you were an investor, you already kind of had an inkling that this wasn't just, hey, let's go and do shared office space, or let's do flex space. There was already this guise of like, hey, we're going to take over the world. Okay. And so there was a tell here in these financials. The other point here that I thought was really interesting is, even though you say you've got this scalable model and you say your space as a service, you're getting to a 36%, 36.1%, EBITDA margin, which is not a scalable business. So as each one of these locations gets filled up, this is very similar to a health club. I rent the space, I build up my membership, and then I try to make a margin above what it costs me in my rent. In addition to that, as you take a look at the balance sheet here and you project it out, just the amount of capital that needs to get pulled together in order to build a location like this, and also the amount of deposits that you need to put down, which is basically dead money that goes to a landlord and sits in an escrow account. Over time, landlords will give you a little more flexibility because you've got this great balance sheet. But if you saw this balance sheet, Sal, maybe go to you here. If you were trying to lease equipment and you got this balance sheet and brought it to your credit crew here, what would they quickly probably tell you?
Well, first of all, the leasing company would be saying, will Precor please do a recourse on this? And our CFO will say, Sal, are you out of your mind?
Right. So look, the only way this company grows is if it has access to a significant amount of capital. So when you take a look at this and you say, okay, you want to create a scalable business and you want to try to create something that has a competitive advantage, you need all this capital up front in order to become the leader. Unfortunately, the oversight wasn't there. The decisions that needed to be made to slow down the growth of this business. If you take the top, I was reading something the other day that I think in the top 4 demographic market areas of the country, have over 50% of the people. So you don't really need to go to 30 cities. You don't need to go to 100 cities worldwide. That's just, your ego that's growing. It's not what makes the most sense to do with a business. So if you looked at a geography here and you said, okay, let's go and dominate New York, let's dominate San Francisco, and let's go to LA, Phoenix, Houston, Dallas, you'd have a lot different outcome. This company probably is a public company, and it probably does fill up in each one of the locations. So, as you look at the rest of the financials here, total square footage, as Jeff was referencing, 12 million square feet, you become the largest landlord, but you actually don't own any of your real estate. So you're basically in the business of trying to make a margin off of someone else. So, This is a real interesting, real-time case. We all kind of watch this real time, which is, it's kind of fascinating because there's nothing that I need to educate anyone on of like, hey, this is what happened in the past. Like we all kind of saw it. We're all somewhat naysayers. And I was trying to probe Jeff because I originally said this business model is bullshit. And then I see Jamie Dimon get involved in SoftBank. And I'm like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something here. And then I said, nah, that doesn't make sense. They're renting too much space, and then they try to go public. And once they go public, that's when all these exhibits start to go out. And then all the naysayers get to say, hey, I told you so. So that is a wrap on our WeWork case. We are going to get together on Thursday. We're going to go over a group called Silver Lake, which is the venture capital investor in Varus and has done a lot of technology investments. The case is optional to read. What I really want you to read is the link. That's a big summary article. Dave, you're going to send that around to everyone. And what we're going to talk about there is, investing capital in business that are scalable and also putting debt on those businesses. So I'm going to go over, we're going to do a crash course on pre-money valuation, post-money valuation, what the returns look like for investors, what they're trying to solve for, and what businesses you can put debt on and which ones you can't. So thanks for a good chat tonight. We'll meet again in the networking room. Some of you guys will be protagonists and antagonists, and look forward to seeing you guys again on Thursday. So on 3, 1, 2, 3. Halo.
Halo.
Good night, everybody. Great class, Peter. Thanks,
Later, guys.
thanks, David.
Bye, guys.
Good stuff.
Thanks, I'll take care,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Dave.
See ya. Good.
Good night, Brad.